Thank you for joining us, Secretary Yellen. On August 23rd of last year, I sent letters to the CEOs of the 5 largest banks in the United States: JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, US Bank, Wells Fargo, and Citi. I sought detailed information on the status of the pledges they announced in response to the global movement for Black Lives in 2020 following the murder of George Floyd. Collectively, the 5 banks pledged more than $32.5 billion towards investing in racial equity. Although the racial wealth gap is over $10 trillion, it was encouraging to see the banks take this step. For generations, there has been the intentional refusal of mortgages to Black residents, the systemic denial of loans to Black entrepreneurs, and the wholesale redlining of Black neighborhoods. I truly believe that the banking industry has long contributed to the problem and must now work toward the solution. When I told this to the CEOs and requested an audit, I received a response from each of the 5 banks. For months, my team poured over hundreds of documents. It's clear that the banks have made progress to fulfilling their racial equity promises in many areas. Unfortunately, there has been little to no progress in the category of institutional policy changes. This category is focused on the internal policies of a bank, not just the external investments. It includes things like eliminating overdraft fees, expanding language access, opening physical branches in Black communities, and promoting Black people to the highest leadership levels of the bank. Our final analysis is that steps have been taken, but not enough. We need long-term change, not just one-time investments to root out racial injustice in the banking industry. Secretary Yellen, when financial institutions perpetuate and benefit from racism, discrimination, and the exploitation of Black communities, they exacerbate systemic risk in our financial system. The FSOC Analytic Framework for Financial Stability Risk, published last November, pointed out that risks to low-income, minority, and underserved communities can become serious enough to pose a threat to financial stability. For example, the 2007 to 2009 financial crisis, we saw how decades of redlining made Black communities more vulnerable targets for subprime mortgages. In light of this, and I hope this is a simple yes or no answer, Secretary Yellen, do you agree that racism and racial inequity is a threat to the financial system?
Well, it could be, and it is one of the factors that Dodd-Frank told us to take into account in considering designations.
I'll take that as a yes, very good. And to follow up on that, what steps is FSOC taking to monitor and mitigate the threat that racist practices and policies perpetuated by banks can pose to the financial system?
Well, individual supervisors of banks are responsible for ensuring, for example, that CRA requirements are met by banks, and the CFPB has authority to make sure that our fair lending and other laws are obeyed.
All right. Okay. Well, just as I close here, Chair McHenry, in previous Congresses, this committee held hearings with the largest financial institutions in order to allow members to directly ask them questions on the record. This, of course, is in recognition of the bank's outsized role in our economy and our congressional responsibility for proper oversight for the American public. Mr. Chair, will you convene a hearing with the CEOs of the largest banks?
Will the gentlelady restate her question?
Yes. I wanted to ask if you would follow the esteemed tradition and efforts of Ranking Member Waters and do a hearing with the largest banks so that we could ask them questions on the record and conduct proper oversight, given the outsized role they play in the economy.
It was the chair's decision that it was easier just to watch the Senate do that hearing rather than to hear the second day of the same testimony. So that's why the chair did not do that this year.
All right. Okay, well, that's my time. Thank you, and I yield.